We're really excited because Saddleback Worship recently released its first full-length album called Alive and Well. And so today on today's episode, you're going to hear from Josh Miller. Josh is a worship leader and songwriter on our staff team who led the project, along with a couple other key contributors, Mike Kopelis and Tati. They're just really dear contributors here and have really spearheaded such significant movements and moments with our team. So let's dive straight away into today's conversation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Lead with Worship. My name's Josh, and I'm one of the worship leaders here at Saddleback Church. I'm in here today with Mike Kopelis and Tati Ortiz, just dear friends of mine. Tati looks after our videos and visuals, and when we create those videos and visuals that help pull people in and tell the story in a new and creative way. And Mike, who's been on team for a long time, looks after our production and really helps to steer the songwriting community and the different projects that we feel God has called us to steward. And I'm one of the songwriters and part of the team that helps put these albums and songs together. And I don't know, I'm just really excited, guys, to talk about Alive and Well, an album that our team and our church recently released during a really unique season. And not to just talk about that project, but also talk about why we do that, or why we even carve out time to put pen to paper and to kind of get a pulse as to where our church is and where we're heading. I think it's really important. I think it's really important for churches to do that and to make space for that. And it doesn't have to be everyone doing it the same way, but I do think that there's value in creating space for creatives to write songs and release songs that mark a church's, season and where they're at and where they're heading. And so I'm really excited to talk about that. And I'm excited to talk with you guys about it.
Yeah.
All right, I know
We're very excited too.
Yeah. Let's talk.
Tati's like, when you're done talking, I'll be able to comment. But I kind of want to dive into different things. But I know both of you were such key contributors to the album, and you both grew up in church. I know I did. And maybe Mike, we'll start with you and just maybe talk a little bit about how growing up in church prepared you to create for the church.
Mm. Let's see. I mean, music for me, particularly creating and just playing music, started in my high school group in church. And it was the place where my youth leader facilitated an opportunity for me to serve, even when I felt like my skill sets weren't quite prepared to play on a stage in front of people or lead people. And, even looking back, I don't even know if I really understood what leading was in high school.
Yeah.
as much as I was just terrified to play guitar in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But gosh, it molded and shaped everything that I do in terms of creation and why I create. We create inside and outside of the church, but with the purpose of Christ in our life, we're creating to be like our Maker. And so I think just growing in those skill sets in high school prepared me for desiring to do music for a living. All the meanwhile being so rooted in my church that prepared me for my position here at the church.
Yeah.
And through all that has obviously transformed into an album that we can be really proud of, that our church can sing. And so I think it's just, all that preparation over a long period of time and learning what it means to steward your gifts and talents and use them for the right purpose.
Yeah. That's so great. Tati, what about you?
So I grew up in a Pentecostal church.
Me too. Me
in
too.
Puerto
Pentecostal
Rico.
kids.
Yeah.
Baptist over here.
And we had a lot of ways to praise God with different arts.
Yeah.
And I remember even when I was little, my mom will do like plays in the church. And it was so interesting on how you could use different forms of art, music, graphics, plays, I don't know, like everything you could think about to just share the hope, share the hope and share a message with your church, with your community, and with the people around your church.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned really early, that when God gives you something to say, it's for yourself and for the people around you. And that's what I love about us creating our music and our videos and a lot of original stuff, is just because God has given a message to us that is specifically for our church and specifically for the people that hears us and it's around us. And I learned that very early, doing plays and filming with a little camera and taking some photos and sharing that in my church and in my school. And then coming here and knowing that I could still use all those gifts for the Lord and for our community. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
It's interesting you say those things, Tati, because, where Mike and I might be in a lane of music, and you're a musician as well, you're a worship leader, a singer, but you also bring like a different perspective to art and worship, because I know we've been in meetings where we'll say, this is the song and this is what we see, and we're never short of opinions. Artists and creators we always have an opinion, but you come to the table and always maybe give a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were talking about the album specifically, I know we're kind of parking on more big picture right now, but that's why I value you so much, Tati, is because you hear something, you see something, and you kind of have a different perspective, and it makes sense now that you say that you grew up in a setting where you had various outlets or various expressions of art. And so when you think about releasing an album, there's so much more to it than just writing the song. There's also, the video presentation, the story, like what's the thread that goes through the whole project. And so it's really cool I didn't know that was part of your background. That's really cool.
Yeah. And now more than ever, we hear everywhere, everything is storytelling.
Yeah.
So a worship album needs to have a story.
Yes.
And everything needs to have a story. And for this particular project, it was very different, as we're going to talk a little bit later. But like the way we created this, it wasn't like, so this is the message and this is the story, so let's write songs about that. It was like, no, God is giving us this song.
Yeah.
And then we found out the thread. And then we found out, oh, this is the message that's going around all the lyrics and all around all the music.
Yeah.
So it was very special project since it was a little bit different. But I do love bringing a perspective of who's our listener and what's the message they're listening and how can we capture their attention, and not just with music or with lyrics, but how can we also capture what they see and something that they want to share. I
love that. And Mike, I'm gonna ask you to talk about something in regards to this album that we released called Alive and Well. Saddleback Worship released it in 2021 in September, and it kind of goes to what you were saying, Tati, about why we release music or the story behind, writing music. And for me, I also grew up in a Pentecostal church. For 18 years, I was a part of a beautiful church in Central California. And I remember 12 years old writing songs for my church. I was 12 years old and I had the privilege of being on worship team. And, the songs that I was writing was after hearing Dad, who was senior pastor, talk about his message series that month, or talking about what he wanted the church to, maybe we were going through the book of Acts or the book of Matthew or whatever. And so I was trying to find ways to write songs that were tethered to the heartbeat of the church. And so I think, and most of those songs were never heard by anyone other than our church. And I think the why we write songs and why we release songs, I think, is twofold. I think first and foremost, it's what we were created to do, as that's what our heart beats for, is to create, because we were made by the ultimate creator.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that is because the church, the one thing that lasts forever, there are songs to be written as anthems for the church, as songs to remind the church of God's goodness. And it's so beautiful to see new songs, and it's biblical. I mean, in Psalm 96, sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord all the earth. It's biblical to sing new songs. But in regards to this new album, Alive and Well, Tati, you already kind of alluded to it a little bit. It was an interesting season. We were all isolated. We were all at our homes, and we weren't able to have like proper planning meetings. Okay, this is what we're going to write about. We just kind of knew that our church was in a unique season, just like churches across the globe. And we wanted to be diligent with writing the story of our church. The album's called Alive and Well. And I don't think it's by accident that we wrote songs that spoke to the nature of who God is in every season. And it spoke to the nature of the church, that the church is going to last forever. The church is going to be just fine, the bride of Christ. And so what I kind of wanted to ask you, Mikey, was in this specific album, we wrote these songs over Zoom during COVID season. What are some of the things that you look back on and you're like, wow, that was incredible. That season was incredible. And maybe some of the things that were like, that was hard to write that often and be that diligent during a season like COVID.
Yeah. Oh man, I guess to start with the positive, COVID was challenging for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think specifically for me and many of us as creators, that this is what we long to do. This is what we were created to do, was to use our different giftings. I found myself, yearning to create. I mean, when you're in the week to week and pre-COVID or whatever, it's just part of our regular routine. You're kind of always putting out stuff, but then you're at home and you're stuck. And my office was my office. It was nowhere else. It was at home. I'd get out of bed, go downstairs, I'd lock myself away, and I found myself just re-falling in love with what God had given me just to create. And, because so often we get so project-oriented in our creation. So it's like, all right, in 6 months, we're going to do this, or in 1 month, we're going to do this, or in 2 days, now we're going to do this. And we can get so project-oriented in our creation that I personally found myself not creating.
Yeah.
Just to create. I wasn't finding myself sitting down playing my guitar. I wasn't finding myself just sitting down at the piano and just writing music, because there were so many different things to accomplish. And so I think what COVID, the positive of it for me is that in order to get through, I really felt like I just needed to create, because it's the thing that filled me up. It's the thing that made me feel, most connected with God in the midst of like quarantine, and just getting to pour out my hallelujah through songwriting, through just creating music and just being creative. Gosh, it got me through. And so I think for a lot of us, and you could probably speak into it too, but I felt like we needed to.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much about like, let's write an album, as much of like, I just needed to write. I needed to get out what I was feeling inside and what God was teaching me at the time. And I needed to get out these lines and these musical ideas. Right. And it became so, I guess, addictive in a good way. Like I needed it. Like I needed it. Just like my quiet time. Like I needed to go do that. And not because there was an end game of it. And I think the end game ended up being something, because we realized God had been speaking to us in a very unique way.
And it was so cool because it seemed to be a safe haven for us, being locked up in our houses, but having that time with the Lord and with each other over Zoom. And I want Tati, you to maybe talk a little bit about the visuals and the theme around the artwork, because I remember writing all these songs and like trying to figure out like what is the direction, because like there was just so many songs written, like 100 songs over the course of those months, and I eventually started to have to pay attention to like, okay, what is God saying in these songs? Like, what's maybe some common threads? Because I knew when we talked, Tati, we would want to talk about like, what are those themes? And a few of those themes were more apparent when we sat down to talk about the artwork, and that was like hilarious to me, because I had, and a few of the themes that made sense as the songs were written was this idea of God in a state of uncertainty, of a lot of death, a lot of sorrow, a lot of it was and it still is at times, just a very hard season. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's the same God that was with Moses, with Abraham, the same God who performed all of these miracles is active and alive today. And I think in COVID, we had to remind ourselves of that, or else we would get really discouraged. And then the second theme of the light of Jesus, this idea that the night is long and hard, but there's always the promise of dawn. There's always the promise of the morning, of the light of Christ. And then this third theme, which you're the one, Tati, who kind of made it known to me, was this idea of the wanderer finding his or herself home, the sense of home and belonging, home in Christ, not home in a building, and being isolated at our homes. That was really encouraging to know our hope wasn't in a building, it was in Jesus. That was our home base. And so Tati, maybe talk a little bit about, I know you and Gabo and team were a huge part of the artwork and design and kind of the theme of the videos that ran parallel with the project, but maybe talk a little bit about your heart around the visual side of the album.
Yeah. So maybe to give like a little behind the scenes on how we did this, we had a couple of meetings with a few of the team that listened to the whole album. And we had this meeting where we were brainstorming words, concepts, ideas that we were feeling the songs were giving us. And a lot of them were what you just talked about. They would talk about nearness and coming back home and returning and life and breathe and being alive and there being like some type of rhythm and all of those things. Like we were like a group of around 12 people writing down and little notes or papers what we felt the songs were saying.
Yeah.
And then we kind of like grouped them.
Yeah.
And starting like having more opinion about those groups. And it was like a collective thing of finding the thread of what this album was saying.
Yeah.
And there were some strong concepts, as you said. We were finding the light in a lot of these songs, and how we talk differently about the light coming from God, but also that coming back to Him. And along those lines, we talked about some kind of revival, because we were in the middle of it. We were in the middle of the pandemic, and we were in the middle of something that felt like there was supposed to be nothing, no life, no movement, no nothing, because we were isolated, we were alone, like each one in our homes. And in the midst of that, God was speaking us a new song. And that's what we felt, oh yeah, He's speaking like to this church. There's going to be revival with this. And thinking about all those concepts, an image came to mind of like this fabric floating, because like a fabric is something inanimate, like it cannot move on its own. So if it's moving, there's something else moving it. And that fabric became like the interpretation of that revival that was happening in our church. And we kind of like, then after we started talking about this fabric flowing, we talk about like, where is this fabric flowing? Actually, is in the middle of the desert, because this is where we are, where it feels like there's no life around us, and like there's nothing to grab or to hold on to. But God is moving us. And like we are that fabric that God is moving. And a lot of, with the light, a lot of the ideas that came with it was this idea of multiple colors. And when we talked about multiple colors, we talk about like diversity, and like diversity in our sound, and diversity in the people who sing with us, and diversity of message. And when we were talking about that, honestly, I don't remember how someone mentioned this, but we mentioned like a prism, and how the prism was the best representative of something that when light comes in, color comes out. And we thought like, oh my God, how can we bring that into this image of fabric floating? Like a fabric doesn't emanate light. But we thought, well, maybe there's the message. The light comes in through us. Like the light is God, Jesus, His word. And it comes to us that we're moving. And as we're moving, we're showing those colors. And if you see the artwork, you'll see that we see different colors as a prism in the ground. Because even though that whole place looks like it's dead because it's the desert and there's nothing, as we move in God's revival, we are shining that light wherever we're at.
That's really wonderful.
So
That's like mind-blowing. You know, it's like you've explained that to the team before, but hearing it again is just like so purposeful, like it was all on purpose. And it even made me think, Tati, of like the communication that had to happen between, you know, the team making the songs and the visual team. Like there were so many people involved in making sure there was alignment. And I think that's another thing that was really special for our team was, I mean, it took dozens of people to make this happen. And it's really cool to see Jesus unifying people with a common goal and a message that we believe was from heaven. but it took so many different types of creatives
Yeah.
to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if I can say something, like, our church, like during this time, we learned a lot.
Yeah.
If you go back to what we were sharing with our songs, and as the pandemic started, we started doing a lot of videos that we didn't used to.
Right.
So it was like a new area for us to explore and learn. And we started doing videos with iPhones.
Yes.
And then that moved to, okay, we can start meeting again, but just distant and safe. So we started doing like on location shoots with everyone being safely distanced.
Yes.
But that
Make
gave
sure
it-
that's on the record.
Yeah. But that actually, now, like, if you look back, God was preparing us
Yeah.
for a bigger thing.
Yeah.
Because if you tell me that we would do everything we did for this album before the pandemic, I would say we don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing like,
Yeah.
I have no idea how can we make this. But yeah, somehow God was preparing us every week, and we were learning. Oh, so we are filming with this cameras, and this type of shots work, and this
Yeah.
doesn't work, and this lighting, this location works, and this give this message, and this doesn't. And so we learned that for a long time. And then when we were actually deciding to make videos and content for this album, it's like
Yeah.
we had a lot, because we already have learned a lot.
Yeah.
So we knew, oh, if we want to share something like this, maybe we should do a video like this. Maybe we should shoot it something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like God moving us like step by step
Yeah, so
towards
cool.
what we needed to do.
And we didn't see it at the time, but
No,
now,
at all.
but now looking back, we can see the intentionality of what he was giving us the tools to do the task that he needed us to do in that moment.
Yes.
And I think it was a unique season. It was our first album together as a team, so we learned a lot. And Mikey, I know COVID was super unique, and I kind of want to maybe approach this question of just a more general question, not tethered to COVID, but like in the whole process. You were our point producer, then you were kind of looking after the whole album, the arc of the album, the peaks and valleys, dynamics, all of that. Not counting COVID, because I know that came with its own challenges, but like as the producer, what was maybe like your favorite part of the process? And then maybe what was your favorite? I know you probably have many songs that you love, but like maybe a twofold question, maybe what was your favorite part of the process? And then also maybe a song that maybe you felt really deeply for.
Ooh, hands down. Hands down, I've never written this much until this season. So I think hands down, my favorite part of the process has no doubt in my mind songwriting.
Yeah.
Just writing so many times every week, and just seeing the fruit of what God was speaking to us about every time we sat down to write, or every time I'd be like, oh, I have this idea or this melody and these words. What do you think, Josh? Or vice versa. Josh would be up at like 5 a.m. and he'd be like, I couldn't sleep.
I'm such a weirdo. Yeah.
But gosh, the songwriting was just, I think the first part of my favorite part. And then the second part, I think just getting to see the songs kind of come to life, because there's, kind of the songwriting portion of it. And then there's the like, all right, well, now let's paint all the colors that we're going to make within the song. So all of the guitar parts, all the keyboard parts, all the vocal parts, and all the things that represent the song. Because the song is, at its core, lyrics and a vocal and a melody,
Right.
with some sort of musical bedding of some sort. But then there's all these other colors that get painted in the music. And so I think those would be my two favorite, like songwriting and then getting to see the songs come to life. I think having to say no to some songs was really hard.
So hard.
Having written 100 songs or so, and to have so many demos to listen to and realize, well, I loved that song until this song came out.
Right.
And look at the Lord blessed us with. Shoot, what are we going to do with that?
Yep.
I think it was a challenge, but I know it's the title track, but I think just Alive and Well, the song, which I think is why we decided for it to be the title track, is it felt like it kind of wrapped everything that we're saying into kind of one language and one unified message. And I think, that songwriting session was just, it's like the Lord just dropped it in our laps. And just those words are so fresh, and yet they feel so familiar too, right?
Yep.
Like, why wouldn't we say that God's alive and well? But I've never heard anybody speak, that kind of messaging before in that way. And so I think that song for me is just, I can still listen to it at home with my kids and, feel like it's such a sweet time of worship and feel so ministered to it, even having been a songwriter on it.
Yeah. No, I resonate with that. I'm the same way. I have like two favorite parts of the process. The first part is the writing of the song, like the raw, first rough piano voice memo. That's like, I'll probably never be more excited than that. Like, I love seeing the songs come to life, but when the song first is written, it's almost like you can't stop listening to the voice memo. My wife is tired of hearing the voice memo. She's like, I just keep playing it over because I'm just so grateful for that gift. I mean, you started with there was nothing and then there was something. And it's like really cool to experience that. And then the second part is, so if there are any churches listening that write songs or want to write songs, this is a practice that I've really fell in love with over the past handful of years is Theology Checks. So every time we write a song that we know we're going to release it, I send it to one of our teaching pastors. And so I'll say we write a song, and I just always want to get it in front of, obviously, John Cassetta, our worship pastor, but then also, like, for instance, Tom Holliday, I'll send him the lyrics and a demo to it, and he'll respond with any notes if there are any questions he has, and that just allows us to be in line theologically. And I always feel like I can breathe a bit easier knowing that, we've cross-referenced, we've, submitted ourselves under people who have been walking with the Lord for a long time. And I love that part of the process. And I've never forgotten to do it because I so value it for our team and making sure we have that covering. And I think for the song, and hopefully we're able to tell this story soon, but there was a song on the album called Again and Again, and I have so many favorites from this project. It's really hard to nail down one song, but if there was one song where I was like, that was a total God moment, a total like did not see that coming, was probably Again and Again. And we had written this song, and off a whim sent it to our brother Joshua, who's one of our worship pastors at our South Bay campus. And he put his vocal on the demo. He went in his room or closet or wherever he records his vocals, and he literally sang 2 takes, and they were flawless because he's incredible.
And on the same mic that
on the same mic that we're recording this podcast on. And we got it back, and then a few weeks later, it wasn't that much long after that, he contracted the virus, and our church was like desperately in prayer for his life. He was admitted to the ICU. He was in really bad shape. And you guys know he was given a 10% chance to live, I believe, it was what the doctors were saying. And as we were listening to the songs for the album, this song started to play, and I was a wreck because the words he was singing was, "Come now and breathe on me, awaken me, Jesus." Those were literally the words he was singing on the chorus. And the room just felt like, oh my goodness, Lord, what are you trying to say? Like it was almost like a prophetic moment where he was singing over his own situation. And praise God, he's doing better today and is recovering. But we kept that vocal on the album. We kept that demo vocal he recorded at his home when we put it on the album. But I think just the story of that song and how that all shaped out, I just still can't get over the goodness of the Lord in that and that whole situation of Joshua didn't know he was about to walk through that. He was just putting his vocal down on it because we asked him to, and I believe God stirred up faith in us as a community and saw a miracle happen right in front of us. But that was probably my favorite.
I'm really hoping that you don't ask me what's my favorite song, because you guys, like, I was like, Alive and Well, and again, Alive and Well, and again, and again.
It's so funny because I was literally going to ask you that.
Like, oh my God, they already said it. Alive and Well, and again. No, I have so many favorites, but I know I heard Alive and Well when it was still a demo, because we wanted to like start listening to the song to like know where the album was heading, and I couldn't stop. Like, we had it on repeat that whole weekend. I was like, oh my God, this song is amazing.
Yeah.
The church won't stop singing this song because it's so good. And then again and again, like the first time I heard it, I believe Joshua was already on the hospital.
Yeah.
So I cried the first time I heard it, and it's such a good song. Like, as you said, it is a prophetic lyric over himself, but over a lot of people that we know need that breath of Jesus.
So good.
Yeah.
I think before we end our time, I want to maybe ask Mike and then Tati the same question before we. And then I can close this, but I just want to maybe end with, like, through the album and just through your time creating for the church, maybe what's something that you've learned in the last year that you'll always remember, and that maybe carries you into the next season of creating? Because I feel like creating has seasons too. Like, it always feels like, because the church has different seasons, creatives have different seasons, and we're always learning from one season to the next. But maybe from the album, Mike, what have you learned? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
I was hoping you were going to ask
because I see your eyes. I've done ministry with these guys long enough. They're like giving me the eyes. Either of you can go first, but maybe what's a takeaway you've learned, either from Alive and Well, the album, or just creating this past year that has encouraged you, or something you can take to the next season?
Okay, well, Mikey thinks I might share something. We're a team of creative, and when we have so many creatives, we usually, as you said, all of us have opinions.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is we need to be very intentional about what we put out. Everything, like talking about everything, about music, videos, artwork, even if we're doing a teaser, a lyric video, whatever content you're creating, you need to be very intentional about it, because as you create, you start hearing a lot of opinions that they're just what people like. like, oh yeah, because I would like this or I would like that. And this is what we put out is not a message about what people like. It's a message of what God wants to tell his church.
Yeah.
So we got to make sure that we're very intentional with little things like colors and fonts and type of videos. And so we create things that are part of the message and are not just cool things to create.
Yeah.
Or they are the trend, so we got to do it. No, like be intentional about it, because you're already putting a lot of effort. You better make sure that it's the right thing to do. So be intentional about what you choose to put out. And as I said, I learned that needs to be part of everything. Like if you're doing a video, if you're doing a lyric video, if you're doing artwork, don't let things be decided by what people like.
Yeah.
Because, otherwise you'll be running around with people's opinions. And, when you have a clear message from God, you don't need 100 opinions, You'll see the clear thing if you're intentional.
That's good, Tati. What about you, Mike?
Gosh, that was so good.
Yeah, good luck following that.
But I do have to kind of piggyback off of that just a little bit, and then I'll share maybe more. But again, back to kind of what I shared a little bit earlier. I think songwriting and just creating took off all these boxes that I had around what I needed to do. Like whether it was writing a song or just like playing my guitar or whatever it was, it kind of took off all these, like, it has to fit within this box. So it has to be for this deadline and for this project and for this. I learned this diligence to just sit and create without anybody's opinions around it. And I think that's a lot of, the songwriting for this album kind of came out of, we were just putting the words that were from our heart out on pen and paper. And we kind of took off this, we have to do an album. We have to do an album. We have to do an album. We didn't have to do an album. We just started writing. And I think I want to stay there going forward. I don't want to cultivate this idea that we need to make records. Like, I don't want to cultivate this idea that we need to write the best songs because we got to keep up with an album now that we have an album out. Like, I want to write songs that God is speaking to us about for our church, first and foremost, at the core of it. And I want to stay there in the future.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think was it Kyle Smith? He posted something about he was at his church where he grew up in his youth group, and he's part of a great ministry, Vertical Worship. And was it Kyle Smith?
Yeah.
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 You can cut this part out if it's not accurate. Whoever it was posted about how, they're doing some really wonderful things in a ministry. And he was back at his church where he remembers the simple act of worship and growing up in youth group when there weren't albums and there weren't ticket sales and there weren't all these different things that are wonderful, and just kind of reminded of the simplicity of why we were created to worship.
Yeah.
And praise God for albums and technology and all the things that we get to do. But I think what COVID has taught me is to remember why I do everything that I do, why I create.
So good.
For the purpose of creating and mirroring my creator.
It's really good. And that kind of mirroring, being the mirror, like creating because our creator is a creator, is kind of the ending thing that I want to leave with. We've spent time talking about why we write as at Saddleback Church. We talked a little bit about the album and the season that came out of. But as we wrap up, like, if you're listening and you are a worship pastor or a songwriter at a church, or, you know, wherever you're at, I just want to affirm that it matters. That as you put pen to paper, and as you're up at 2 a.m. fighting for that lyric, or you're, you know, on your computer and trying to figure out the best artwork to facilitate that song or story that is in the life of your church, and maybe taking your church to the next season, it all matters. And if we've ever needed the creatives to help and to write that story for the church, it's now. Coming out of a season where it was really hard. It was hard to create, but it brings to life the work that Jesus is doing in the church, locally and globally. It's representing our Creator. It's telling a preferred future of where Jesus is taking his bride. And so I just encourage you, if you're a songwriter, you're an artist, you're a designer. Today we specifically talked about albums and songs, but it's bigger than that too. It's the creatives in the church. And we believe in songwriting, we believe in albums and singles, because we believe that God uses creatives to tell about a better tomorrow, and to paint a picture of what Jesus is doing in the church. And so that can look many different ways. Again, I was 12 years old in a small church in Central California, and I just wrote songs for my church to sing, and they were never released. So, you know, it could be big, it could be small, it can be anywhere in between, but use the gifts that God has given you, not for your glory or for, you know, your, for you to grow and for you to be recognized, but for the glory of God, and for the health of his church, and for his church to last and to be vibrant and beautiful. So, Tati, Mikey, good spending some time with you.
Yes.
It was good to be here.
Yeah. All right, guys, take care.
Bye.
Wow, I really hope that conversation really blessed you and encouraged you today. You know, I loved how Tati shared that when God puts something on your heart, it's often for other people too. I just wanted to stand up and shout amen when I heard her say that, because it's so true that when he lays something on your heart, it's often what's best for your whole team or your family. You know, his plans are always good for all of us, not just one of us at any given moment. And I loved how she shared that, and actually how that particular team has lived that out, and even how one great idea leads to another great idea, or even a medium okay idea leads to the next great idea or good idea. So really thankful for that team. Thanks for listening to that today. Hey, before we leave, just a reminder, you can always stay connected with us in a few different ways. First of all, stay up to date with Saddleback Worship's original music wherever you stream your music. Also, we love to hear from you. We love to hear your questions, episode ideas, and ways that we can serve you. So just email us at leadwithworship@saddleback.com. And lastly, this podcast is just one of the many podcasts produced by Saddleback Church. We have the Doable Discipleship podcast, The Well, and more. So be sure to check out those links in the episode description. Hey, we're so glad we got to spend time with you again today, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next time on Lead with Worship.